Hey, sweetheart. You see that yellow line you just walked over? You see the chevrons on my shoulder? This is an active flight line, not a gift shop tour. You hard of hearing, or are we doing tourist hour out here? Let's go. Turn around, walk yourself back to that gate, and find a chaperone before I find one for you. Sergeant Dax Whitford, 27. H&HS Flight Line Security Augment NCO at Marine Corps Air Station Camp Pendleton. 8 years in, 2.5 on this apron. Loud voice for the small audience he had brought with him. The yellow line under his boots had been freshly painted at 0700, and the smell of the paint had not yet left the apron. Behind him, Lance Corporal Kip Estrella, 22, fell in at his 4 o'clock. Lance Corporal Dane Koski, 21, at his 8. Both with their rifles at low ready. Both watching the woman. The woman did not stop walking. She finished 8 steps. She crossed inside the lip of the painted yellow line. She stopped where the apron's east-west sight line opened on the hangar bay behind it. 8 AH-1Z Vipers in 2 rows. Cowlings open on 718. The APU on 718, whining in the dry heat. Behind the row of birds, the maintenance crib, 40 feet of polished concrete. Plain green-on-green marine combat utilities. Rank insignia removed. Name tape removed. Visitor pass on a lanyard tucked inside her collar, blue letters facing her chest. Halverson, defense liaison, hair in a regulation bun. Boots dusty from the gatewalk. 3 count. Breath in. Breath out. The watch face on her left wrist was already turned inside. She did not look at Whitford. Whitford did not like that. He stepped inside her 2-foot stillness and grabbed her elbow, wide-knuckled, used to it. She turned just slightly toward him. Her voice did not rise. "You don't want to touch me." 3 words. No anger in any of them. The kind of voice a Marine carries when she has said the words once before, in a different country, and the man she said them to no longer exists. Whitford laughed. He looked back over his shoulder to make sure his Lance Corporal saw him laugh. He had done this morning at this apron before, in front of audiences who later told the story at the chow hall. He pulled her elbow toward the gate. Estrella read the signal and stepped in tight from her left. Koski stepped wide to her right. The audience inside the open bay clocked the formation. A maintainer's wrench paused on a bolt. The bell technician on Viper 722 looked up. Lance Corporal Sella Knox, 20, sitting in the cockpit of 718, finishing the morning pre-flight checklist, saw the wedge form through the canopy and stopped breathing for a second. The next 9 seconds were not long enough for anyone in the open bay to walk to the door. She took his wrist off her elbow with a thumb roll and stepped inside his grab. A controlled hip throw put him on the apron at her 3 o'clock. He hit the concrete shoulder first, and the air left him in one flat grunt. Estrella's lunge from her left was a clean, untrained right-hand telegraph aimed at her collar. She caught it into a wrist lock that put him face down beside Whitford, with his shoulder hyperextended just short of damage. Koski threw a wide, late haymaker. She brushed it past her right ear with a quarter pivot, hooked his planted foot, and set him down on the concrete with his rifle muzzle pointed safely into the gravel verge. 3 Marines on the deck, none bleeding, none concussed, none able to immediately stand. She was still inside the painted yellow line. Her hands were open, in the maintenance crib at the back of the open bay. Master Gunnery Sergeant Otto Lindgren, 51, Wing Maintenance Senior Chief, had been holding a Stanley thermos of black coffee in his right hand. The thermos had been an inch from his mouth. The thermos slowed. He set it down on the workbench. He walked the 40 feet from the crib to the apron, at the pace of a man who had done this once before, 12 years ago, on a rooftop staircase in southern Helmand, and did not want to draw a crowd. Whitford twisted on the asphalt. He pushed up on his elbow. His voice broke high. "She assaulted me. She assaulted me. Cobb, somebody. Get over here." Lindgren stopped 2 paces from Whitford's boots and spoke at conversational volume. "Stay down, Sergeant. All 3 of you. Don't move. Hands where I can see them. Eyes front." He did not look at the woman in plain utilities. He stood between her and the 3 Marines on the apron. He keyed his shop radio twice. The hangar bay's overhead fluorescents clicked off in sequence behind him as the morning sun reached the back wall. Halverson took 1 step back and turned toward the open bay. She walked past 718 on chocks with cowlings open. Past 720 in the second row. Past 722 with the bell technician on the wheeled stand. Inside the cockpit of 718, Knox was still looking at her through the canopy. Halverson nodded once. Knox nodded back without thinking. The watch face inside her wrist did not need checking. Whitford had ice on his elbow inside 7 minutes. The H&HS guard shack at the east corner of the apron smelled of cheap coffee and old paper. He had pulled a folding chair to the desk and propped the elbow on a stack of binders. Estrella stood at the door of the shack with both hands on his belt and would not look at him. Koski sat on the second folding chair with his rifle across his knees and his eyes on the gravel verge 20 feet outside the window. "She struck me," Whitford said. "You both saw her strike me. The civilian struck me first." Estrella opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again. "Sergeant." "Yeah," Koski said. Whitford wrote that down too. On the apron, the woman in plain utilities had crossed back to the painted yellow line and stopped 2 feet inside it. She had not moved in 9 minutes. The watch face on her wrist had not turned. The Vipers in the open bay sat in their rows. The bell technician on Viper 722 had gone back to his hose schematic. The maintainers had gone back to wrenches. The morning had pretended to resume. At 10:11, Knox spun up Viper 718 for a maintenance turn at idle. The APU spooled. The rotor disc began its slow first revolutions. Halverson stood at the painted yellow line and listened. 41 seconds. Her head turned a half-inch to the left. She walked across the apron to the maintenance crib. The morning sun caught Lindgren's coffee on the workbench beside him. "Tail rotor servo on 718 is binding," she said. Quiet voice. No edge. "Hear that hesitation at 50% NR. 20 hertz beat against the gearbox harmonic. Pull her off the line." Lindgren did not look at her. He keyed his shop radio. "Maintenance to 718. Shut down. Borescope the tail rotor servo. Now." Knox shut down. The bell tech walked over with a borescope rig. 11 minutes later, he had the servo housing open and a binding hairline in the inboard arm visible through the scope. He stared at the borescope monitor for 9 seconds. Then he stared at the woman in plain utilities, standing 20 feet from him at the painted yellow line. Then he stared back at the monitor. He walked the 8 steps to her. "Ma'am, that was by ear?" She did not answer. She walked back to the painted yellow line. Numbers as authority. 20 hertz against the gearbox harmonic. Hard figures cost the speaker nothing. At 10:58, Reinholdt's clerk couriered a hard copy of the Talon Reach Joint Exercise Plan to the maintenance manager's office for production control coordination. The clerk left the plan on the desk. She did not lock the office. Halverson walked in. She picked up the plan. She turned to page 2, the airspace coordination annex for day 2, and quietly put a finger on a single line in the deconfliction matrix. "Day 2 ground attack profile is at Angels 3, she said to the maintenance manager, voice quiet, conversational. "Day 2 close air support orbit is at Angels 3. Same airspace, same window. Somebody at the S3 transposed the orbit altitude." The maintenance manager read the page. He read it again. He picked up the phone and dialed Reinholdt's S3. She walked out of the office. Her own signature was on the bottom of page 2. M. Halverson, Ground Commander. Dated May 17th, Outside, Lindgren walked the inside of the open bay and pretended to inventory the tool crib. He did not look at her. He counted the same socket set twice. He wrote nothing on the inventory sheet. At 12:27, he keyed the shop radio once, low band. Wing CG's office. Lindgren. Need a quiet word with Sergeant Major Whitaker before close of business. Off the books. Yeah. Today. He pocketed the radio. He picked up his thermos. The coffee had gone cold. He drank it anyway. At 13:49, the bell technician found Halverson at the painted yellow line. His coveralls had hydraulic fluid on the right forearm. His boots had not been cleaned in a week. Ma'am, the servo on 718. That would have been a tail rotor strike on lift. You just saved a crew. I have to ask, who are you? Halverson looked at him for one breath. Defense liaison. Ma'am, that's a badge title. She did not answer. She walked past him toward the squadron ready room. In the H&HS guard shack, the ice pack on Whitford's elbow had gone tepid. He had written 4 pages of block letters across 2 yellow legal pads. He had drawn the apron from memory and marked the path he claimed the woman had walked across the painted yellow line. He had drawn arrows. On a fresh page, he wrote one line in clean block capitals and underlined it twice. Struck Marine without provocation. Assault report to follow. Outside, the painted yellow line was unbroken under the woman's boots. The watch face inside her wrist did not need checking. Thursday morning came up bright and hot. The H&HS Security Augment Group chat was named Flight Line OPS. Whitford had pinned a screenshot at 0712, the woman at the painted yellow line, taken from his shack at 10:41 Wednesday, with the long lens off his personal camera. Caption: Hangar Karen. Contractor cosplay. Keep her off the line. Estrella read the chat on his rack at the barracks at 0719. He turned his phone face down on his chest. He did not type back. Koski typed a laughing face emoji and turned over. At 0903, Whitford walked Halverson's visitor pass, Halverson, Defense Liaison, to the H&HS Provost Sergeant's desk. He signed out a badge-pulled pending review entry. He filed an incident-related lookup against her cover name. The Provost Sergeant did not look up from his keyboard. He signed his initials in the corner of the form and slid it back. Lindgren walked into the H&HS office on a separate pretext at 9:04. He stood at the file cabinet at the back of the room. He watched Whitford sign the form. He photographed the form on his shop phone when Whitford turned his back. Then he walked out. On the apron, the morning ground on. Halverson walked the painted yellow line. She did not produce her badge. She did not need to. The provost clerk had it. At 11:36 on Friday afternoon, Knox was wrestling a kinked fueling hose at the inboard manifold of Viper 720. The kink had set in solid. She had been on it for 9 minutes. She was going to be late on the turn time. The kink was not in the manual. Halverson walked past the painted yellow line. She stopped next to Knox without speaking. She put one steady hand on the kink. She rotated the hose at the brass collar, a precise 3/4 turn, and the kink walked itself out, and the hose pressurized clean. Knox stared at her. "Ma'am." "Thank you." Halverson nodded once. She did not say a word. She walked back to the painted yellow line and stopped 2 feet inside it. In the maintenance crib at the back of the bay, Lindgren watched Knox watch the woman walk away. He poured himself another coffee. At 15:47, Whitford had typed up the first paragraph of his sworn statement on the shack's beat-up laptop. The shack printer was out of toner. He waited 11 minutes for a replacement cartridge. He printed the paragraph on H&HS letterhead. He set it in front of Estrella with a pen. "Initial here, and here. That's a witness block. You watched her strike me first." Estrella held the pen for 10 seconds. He initialed the bottom corner of page 1. He initialed the bottom corner of page 2. He could not bring himself to put a third initial in the witness block beside the assertion. Whitford did not notice. "Sergeant, don't." Koski wrote a 14-word statement when his turn came. The statement did not say anyone struck anyone. It said 3 Marines had attempted to redirect a civilian off the painted yellow line. Whitford did not notice that either. He stapled it to the back of the packet. At 17:01, Lindgren passed Knox at the tool crib. He said nothing. He nodded at her once. She did not understand the nod. She nodded back anyway. She would remember the nod a week from now and not be able to say what it had meant in the moment, only what it had meant by Thursday. Out on the apron, Halverson walked the painted yellow line. She stopped at the spot opposite the maintenance crib. She turned a 1/4 degree. Her watch face was inside her wrist. She had been on the apron without a badge since 10 this morning. Whitford and his security augment had passed her 7 times today. None of them had stopped her. She had not moved them. Some people watched a uniform walk past and decided they got to write the story she was allowed to tell. 3 Marines on a flight line had just done that. There were people in this story who were about to lose more than they understood. The badge was about to come off Whitford. The badge was about to come off 2 other careers. There were people who needed to see what happened when the wrong people picked the wrong woman, and the kind of people who needed to see it were people who had themselves been picked wrong by men with chevrons and clipboards. If a viewer wanted to know what happened when a sergeant built a case against himself in his own handwriting, if a viewer wanted to see the morning the badge came off, they could subscribe to Honor Tales. The story was going to get loud, and it was going to land on the apron of HMLA 369 at 0734 on Thursday morning, with 304 Marines watching. At 1840, Whitford wrote the second page of his sworn statement on the shack letterhead. He underlined the words, "Without provocation," twice. Across the apron, the woman in plain utilities was still at the painted yellow line. The sun had gone behind Hangar Bay 1. The fluorescence inside the bay had not come on yet. Whitford set the second page on top of the first. Saturday morning came up gray. Whitford signed page 3 of the sworn statement at 0902, notarized on the H&HS desk by a sergeant from his own augment. He attached Estrella's initialed pages. He attached Koski's 14-word statement. He attached his own incident-related lookup against Halverson, defense liaison. He drafted a cover memo requesting civil trespass charges and assault prosecution under Article 128. He used the H&HS S2 letterhead. He had not been authorized to use the S2 letterhead. He used it anyway. 3 pages of statement, 2 witness blocks, 1 cover memo. The packet weighed less than a sandwich. Whitford slid it into a manila folder and walked the folder back to the shack to sit on overnight. He would walk it across the apron to Colonel Reinholdt's office on Wednesday. At 11:48, he pulled the printed visitor log for Wednesday morning. He whited out the entry timestamp for Halverson, defense liaison, 0937, and wrote 0922 over it in his own hand. The painted yellow line had been repainted at 0700 Wednesday morning by a contractor named Brokaw, but the entry needed to put her on the apron before the line was clearly painted. He had decided this was a small lie. He had told larger ones for smaller reasons. In the maintenance crib at the back of the open bay, Lindgren held the original badge swipe timestamp on his shop phone. He did not say a word. He poured himself a fresh cup of coffee. The thermos had been refilled twice since Wednesday morning. At 13:10 Sunday, the provost marshal's clerk walked out to the painted yellow line and asked Halverson for her badge. She unclipped it without comment and handed it over. "Ma'am, your access is suspended pending review." "Understood." She did not produce a phone. She did not produce a credential. She did not produce a kaiku. She walked back to the painted yellow line and stopped 2 feet inside it. She walked the apron all afternoon without a badge. 3 count. Breath in. Breath out. The watch face on her left wrist was inside. At 16:04, the bell technician on Viper 722 was chasing a chafed hydraulic line in the rotor head circuit. The tech pub's computer was rebooting. He could not find the spec for line pressure. He had been on the line for 28 minutes. Halverson walked alongside him at the painted yellow line. She did not stop walking. She quoted the spec. 3,050 psi nominal. 3,200 operational ceiling. Inboard arm chafe limit, 0.032 inches. Cut it out at 0.025 and reroute behind the firewall stanchion. The bell tech wrote it down on a clean glove. He did not ask her who she was again. The next time he saw her, he would salute. Monday morning came up cool. The trespass petition packet was finished and sitting in Reinhold's clerk's wire basket at 0851. The clerk was going to walk it into Reinhold's office at 0855 with the rest of the morning's correspondence. Lindgren happened to be in the outer office on a maintenance coordination pretext. He picked up the packet from the wire basket. He read the cover memo while standing at the corner of the desk. He read the first paragraph of the sworn statement. He read Koski's 14-word statement, which did not say anyone struck anyone, and the corner of his mouth moved a quarter inch. He set the packet back down in the wire basket, with the cover memo turned face down. He smiled at the clerk. "Tell the colonel maintenance has a question about the corridor deconfliction," he said. "I'll catch him after lunch." "Yes, Master Gunnery Sergeant." The clerk delivered the packet to Reinhold at 0901. Reinhold was in a video teleconference and did not open it. The packet sat on the corner of his desk for 6 hours and 28 minutes. Reinhold did not open it then either. The packet would sit on Reinhold's desk until Wednesday afternoon at 1644. At 1932 Monday dusk, Halverson stood at the painted yellow line in plain utilities, with no badge. The Vipers were tied down inside the bay. The H&HS shack at the east corner of the apron was dark. Whitford had gone home. Lindgren was the only Marine in the open bay. He stood at the maintenance crib with a cold thermos and did not look at her. 3 miles east, a Huey lifted off from a pad and turned inland on a heading toward the Wing CG's office. Running lights bright against the dusk, Halverson watched the running lights pass behind the hangar bay's east column and disappear. She did not turn her head. The system had taken her badge. The system had sworn her in absentia. The system had stapled a story to her cover name in 3 counts she had not been allowed to answer. The system was about to do what it would do next, and she was going to walk the painted yellow line tomorrow morning at 0700 with the same boots and the same watch and the same hands open. And the system was going to find out it was speaking to the wrong colonel. She walked back to the squadron VIP quarters at 2003. She did not look back. The empty hangar at 2210 Monday night was the kind of quiet a maintenance bay only carried after a long week. The Vipers were tied down. The fluorescents had been switched to red. The painted yellow line was a black ribbon under the red. The apron outside was empty. The H&HS shack at the east corner was dark. Halverson stood at the painted yellow line again, looking inboard at the row of tied-down birds. The watch face on her left wrist was inside. Plain utilities. No badge. Lindgren walked the 40 feet from the maintenance crib at the pace of a man who had walked it many times. He stopped 2 paces from her. He did not look at the birds. He looked at the woman in plain utilities for the first time in 5 days. "Ma'am, I haven't said it out loud in 11 years. I'm saying it now. If they pick you up off this flight line in cuffs tomorrow morning, that's on me. Walk away, Otto. This is going to play through." "Ma'am, permission to disagree." She looked at him for the first time in 5 days. "Granted." Lindgren nodded once. He turned. He walked back to the maintenance crib and poured himself a fresh thermos. He started work at 0617 Tuesday morning at the H&HS data clerk's terminal. He pulled Whitford's badge swipe history for the last 90 days under a pretext of an unrelated maintenance shop audit. He printed a single page. He highlighted one line. March 8th, 2026. 0200 to 0600. Whitford's badge had not swiped into the H&HS gate. He had been logged on watch. He had been off post. Lindgren folded the page in half. He put it in the inside pocket of his utility blouse. He walked out of the data clerk's office at 0634. The data clerk did not look up. At 0734, he photographed page 7 of the H&HS visitor log book on his shop phone. He photographed the same page from the digital backup, taken automatically at 1200 each day. The timestamp on the printed page read 0922 in Whitford's handwriting over a whited-out original. The digital backup read 0937, 2 photographs, 1 discrepancy. The phone went back into his utility blouse inside pocket. At 0902, he called a former HMLA 369 plane captain on his personal cell. Lance Corporal Casper Eilers had left the Corps 6 months ago after a fabricated misconduct chit signed by Sergeant Whitford. Eilers picked up on the second ring. He was working at a Subaru dealership in Vista. He had not expected to hear from Lindgren ever again. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. Lindgren wrote down 2 phrases on a maintenance scratch pad. He put the scratch pad in his desk drawer beside the swipe card page and the 2 photographs of the logbook. He locked the drawer. He turned the brass key on its chain and dropped it inside his utility blouse. He looked at his cold thermos. 3 things, he said. To no one. That's a pattern. At 11:48, Lance Corporal Estrella, on a maintenance fetch errand, walked past Lindgren at the maintenance crib. Lindgren did not look up from a wrench he was wiping. He spoke low, to no one in particular, and the words landed exactly where they were aimed. Lance Corporal, when the senior officer asks you a question, you're going to want to tell the truth. You're going to want to say it the first time he asks. That's a free piece of advice. Estrella did not stop walking. He did not look at Lindgren. He kept going. At the next corner, he stopped and stood still for 16 seconds before he kept walking. At 14:21, Lindgren paused at the cockpit of Viper 718, where Knox was finishing the post-flight. He spoke at conversational volume. Lance Corporal Knox, you watched the morning of the 20th, didn't you? From the cockpit of this aircraft. Yes, Monsieur Sardine. When the senior officer asks, you tell him exactly what you saw. You tell him in plain language. That's an order. Aye, Monsieur Sergeant. Lindgren nodded once. He walked back to the crib. Some sergeant spent a career building a case. This one had built one in 8 days against himself and had not noticed. The fuse was lit. The powder was Thursday morning. Viewers who wanted to see what happened when the fuse reached the powder could subscribe to Honor Tales. The answer was 2 parts away. Was going to wear 1 silver star and step off a Huey at 0734. At 22:38 Tuesday, the hangar bay was dark. The Vipers were tied down. Lindgren locked the maintenance crib desk drawer with the single brass key on the chain around his neck. He poured the last of the thermos into the dirt outside the bay. 3 miles east, the Huey on the wing CG's pad was cold and tied down. By Thursday morning at 0700, it would be running. He turned out the light. The painted yellow line went black. At 0430 Wednesday morning, Halverson sat on the edge of the bed in the squadron VIP quarters, in plain green-on-green utilities. Boots off. The room smelled of the cheap pine cleaner the duty had run through it on Saturday, and the cold coffee that had sat on the desk overnight. She removed her watch and laid it face up on the nightstand. The watch face had not been turned out in 5 days. The face read, 0431. She opened the leather case she had carried for 12 years. Inside, on dark felt, a thin black and gold lapel pin shaped like a small dagger, crossed with a length of rope. Below it, folded once, a Polaroid. Yellow at the edges, a man in marsocks, kid on a rooftop in helmet off, grinning at the camera. Sandy hair plastered to his forehead from the heat. The grin had not aged. Some things you carried inside the leather case because the case knew what you could not say out loud. The compound was a 3-room mud brick block on the edge of a poppy field, 2 kilometers north of Sangan town, Helmand. The date was February 12th, 2014. The time on her watch had been 0247 local. 8 assaulters at the inner door. Captain Mira Halverson, age 30. Marsoc Raider Element Commander. Call sign Gauntlet. Staff Sergeant Drew R. Kasparian, 28. Sandy-haired, grinning. Call sign Slate. Staff Sergeant Otto Lindgren, 39. Second man on the stack. 5 others. The wire on the inner door was rigged to a 30-second buzzer in the next room. They had under 30 seconds of surprise before everyone inside knew. The plan said no shots, if at all possible. The plan was about to become a different plan. Halverson breached. The first room was a kitchen. 2 men. Halverson took both with her M4 and cleared left. The second room was 6 feet by 8 feet. 4 men inside. 3 rifles. The carbines went dry inside 30 seconds. Both sides. The rooms were too small. The magazine changes were too slow. The men inside the room had switched to a kitchen cleaver and a length of pipe and a section of broken doorframe. Halverson took the doorframe section off a Taliban fighter who was swinging it at Lindgren's blind side. She broke the swing across his own forearm. She finished him with the broken end of the wood. The second man came for her with the cleaver. She drove the broken doorframe under his jaw. The sub-commander, in the corner, dropped the pipe and put his hands flat against the wall, and she took him alive. The third room was empty. Kasparian climbed the outer staircase to clear the rooftop and confirm the helo's approach corridor. The round came in from a guard on the next compound's roof, 400 meters east. Upper thigh. Femoral. Halverson was up the staircase inside 11 seconds, with the sub-commander zip-tied to a Lindgren wrist and the assault team prepping exfil. She dropped her knee on the bleed. She wrapped the wound with a sleeve she tore from her own utility blouse. She talked to Kasparian the entire time, and Kasparian, 28, sandy-haired, grinning, did not stop talking back. "Ma'am, tell my sister it was a clean fight. Tell her it was a clean. Tell her yourself, Drew. 800 meters. 62 minutes to the bird. You're going home." She picked him up across her shoulders in a fireman's carry. She walked him down the outer staircase, across the courtyard, through the gate in the mud wall, into the poppy field. 800 meters of moonlit poppy. Lindgren on her 3 o'clock with the sub-commander and his own rifle. The pace did not slow. 62 minutes did not feel like 62 minutes. It felt like 1 minute repeated 62 times. The case vac was a marine UH-1Y Venom out of FOB Edinburgh. It lifted at 0317 local, with Kasparian on the litter. Halverson stayed on the ground with the assault team and the sub-commander to consolidate the exfil. The radio voice from the bird's right seater stayed steady for 32 minutes. Then it went flat. Taking fire, wire, losing tail. The bird went off the screen at 0356. The bird crashed in a ravine 4 kilometers north. By morning, a Pakistani patrol was on the wreckage. The recovery team found the bird burned to the spar. No body. Slat was declared killed in action. A closed casket went home with sandbags in it. The Silver Star citation did not mention the close quarters work. The community classified that part. Lindgren had not raised his voice in 11 years. Halverson closed the leather case at 0511. She did not put the pin on. She put her watch back on, face turned to the inside of her left wrist. Outside, sunrise came pink across the apron. The parked Vipers in the open bay threw long shadows. She stood. She walked out of the quarters in plain green-on-green utilities and crossed the apron toward the painted yellow line. The Polaroid stayed in the leather case. The case stayed in the trunk. She had walked into Hangar alone. She would walk out of this apron alone, too. 3 miles east, a Huey was beginning its pre-flight. The hand delivery happened at 14:48 Wednesday afternoon. Whitford was in a freshly pressed service uniform. The ice pack had been off his elbow since Sunday. The bruise on his shoulder had gone the brown yellow of a week-old hit. He walked into Reinhold's outer office at parade pace with the manila folder under his arm. He handed it to the clerk. Cover memo on top. Sworn statement. 2 witness blocks. Falsified visitor log printout. Look up against Halverson. Defense liaison. Request for civil trespass and assault prosecution under Article 128. The clerk time-stamped the receipt. She signed it. Whitford signed it. Sergeant, the colonel will see it before close of business. Thank you, ma'am. Whitford walked out at parade pace. He got 2 steps into the corridor and let a smile crack his face. He had built the morning his way. 8 days of paperwork, 3 witness signatures, 1 cover memo. The packet weighed less than a sandwich. The packet was going to put the woman in plain utilities off the flight line tonight and in front of a magistrate by Friday. At 15:02, Lindgren walked into the maintenance manager's office and opened a manila folder he had been carrying under his clipboard. Inside the folder, a copy of page 2 of the Talon Reach Joint Exercise Plan with Halverson's actual signature. M. Halverson, Ground Commander, dated May 17th. The photograph of the H&HS visitor log book with the timestamp 0937 reading clearly in original ink. The printed swipe card record showing Whitford off post on the watch of March 8th. The 4-minute scratch pad notes from his call with Casper Eilers in blue ballpoint. A maintenance shop after-action note Halverson had signed under her cover initials, acknowledging the tail rotor servo find on 7/18 at 10:11 Wednesday. The folder weighed less than a sandwich. It did not need to weigh more. At 15:38, the woman in plain utilities was standing at the painted yellow line. No badge, plain utilities. The watch face inside her wrist. Whitford walked toward her from the H&HS shack with the satisfied gait of a man who had just stapled paper to another person's career. He stopped 3 feet from her. Estrella and Koski were at the door of the shack, 20 meters east. Whitford lowered his voice to the conversational pitch a Marine used in front of an audience he wanted to impress. Pack your toothbrush, sweetheart. Walk it pretty while you still can. They're going to come for you tonight. I made sure of it. Halverson turned just slightly toward him. Her watch face was inside her wrist. Her hands were open. She smiled at him for the first time in 8 days. She did not say a word. Whitford did not know why she was smiling. He laughed anyway, because he had always laughed in front of his Lance Corporals. He turned and walked back to the H&HS shack. Estrella had been watching the smile. Estrella did not laugh. Some smiles came after the verdict. This one came 18 hours ahead. At 16:44, Colonel Bart Reinhold, 49, MARSOC liaison to the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, opened the packet on his desk between 2 phone calls. He read the cover memo. He read the sworn statement. He read Estrella's initialed pages. He read Koski's 14-word statement, which did not say anyone struck anyone, and frowned. He flipped back to the cover memo and read, Halverson, Defense Liaison. He keyed the intercom. Get me the M3 Joint Exercise Plan for Talon Reach. Page 2. Ground Commander signature block. The clerk brought the plan. Reinhold read page 2 for 9 seconds. He turned and looked at the framed photograph above his credenza. A younger Reinhold, in MARSOC kit, in the foreground. A younger Lindgren behind him. A younger Captain Halverson, hair shorter, jaw set, on his right shoulder. The picture had been taken at FOB Edinburgh in 2014. the morning after a raid that had gone wrong on a rooftop in Sungen. Reinhold did not speak. He put the packet flat on his desk. He keyed the intercom again. "Get me the Wing CG's office. Sergeant Major Whitaker. Today. As soon as possible." At 1817, the Wing CG's Huey crew chief walked out to the pad in marine flight gear and ran the pre-flight on the bird. The bird would be cold and tied down tonight. By 0700 Thursday morning, it would be running. The crew chief wrote the run sheet on a clipboard. He did not know what tomorrow morning's flight was for. He did not ask. At 1924, Halverson walked back to her quarters and closed the door. She opened the leather case on the nightstand. She did not put the pin on. She closed the case. She set the watch on the nightstand face up. She went to bed at 20:02. 3 miles east, a Huey was tied down on a pad with its fuel topped. Inside the maintenance crib of HMLA 369 Hangar Bay 1, Master Gunnery Sergeant Otto Lindgren locked his desk drawer and put the brass key on a chain around his neck and turned out the light. The painted yellow line went black. The morning was 8 hours away. 0727 Thursday morning. The apron of HMLA 369 was bright under a clear May sky. The painted yellow line had been freshly repainted at 0700. The smell of the safety yellow had not yet left the concrete. The squadron had fallen in by division. Line crew on the right, maintainers in the center, ordnance on the left. The squadron CO and the operations officer at the front, the raider liaison element 4 ranks back. Colonel Reinhold stood 2 paces left of the squadron CO with a packet on a clipboard. He was frowning. Whitford stood in the H&HS security augment block with Estrella on his 3 o'clock and Koski on his 9. His service uniform was pressed. His clipboard was on his left arm. He believed he was about to watch a brigadier general sign a trespass petition. Lindgren was in the front rank of the maintenance cadre, hands at his sides. Service Charlies. The brass key was inside his utility blouse on its chain. Sella Knox was at parade rest in the line crew rank, second from the right. Halverson was at the painted yellow line at the back of the apron, in plain green-on-green utilities, with no rank insignia and no badge. 304 Marines, 6 aircraft, 1 painted yellow line, 1 woman in unmarked utilities at the back. The Huey landed at 0734 on the north pad 60 meters east of the apron. The rotor disc settled. Brigadier General Calvin Aldrich, 53, in service Charlies with 1 silver star, stepped off. The sergeant major called the apron to attention. "Attention on deck!" 304 Marines snapped to. Aldrich removed his cover. He returned the salute of the squadron CO. He walked to Reinhold. "Colonel, show me the packet." Reinhold handed him the packet on the clipboard. Aldrich read the cover memo for 9 seconds. He read the sworn statement. He read Koski's 14-word statement, and the corner of his mouth moved a 1/4 inch. He looked at Reinhold. "Where is the ground commander?" "Back of the apron, painted yellow line." Aldrich handed the packet back. He walked past the squadron CO. He walked past the operations officer. He walked past the raider liaison element. He walked past the maintenance cadre, and Lindgren in the front rank did not look up. He walked past the line crew. He walked past Sella Knox at parade rest. He walked past the ordnance block. He walked the full 80 meters of the apron to the painted yellow line at the back. He stopped 3 feet from the woman in plain green-on-green utilities. He came to attention. He rendered the textbook hand salute. "Lieutenant Colonel Halverson, ma'am." From the front rank of the maintenance cadre, Master Gunnery Sergeant Otto Lindgren said it loud enough for the second rank to hear. "Gauntlet 6, on deck." The squadron CO came to attention. The operations officer came to attention. The raider liaison element came to attention. The line crew came to attention. The ordnance block came to attention. The H&HS security augment block, including Estrella and Koski, came to attention. 304 Marines on the apron of HMLA 369 held the salute. Halverson returned it. Whitford's face cycled in 4 beats. Confusion, disbelief, recognition, horror. His clipboard turned once in his offhand. It hit the asphalt with a flat slap that everyone in the H&HS block heard. Estrella's eyes moved to the asphalt and stayed there. Koski exhaled once and held the salute. Aldrich turned to face the apron, Halverson at his right shoulder. Marines. His voice was parade voice. It carried to the back rank. The officer at my right shoulder is Lieutenant Colonel Mira Halverson, United States Marine Corps. She is the Joint Task Force Ground Commander for Talon Reach. She has been on this flight line for 8 days. Some of you knew. Most of you did not. One of you decided she was somebody else. He looked at Whitford. The clipboard was at his boots. Sergeant Whitford, front and center. Whitford stepped out. His boots scuffed the asphalt. He left the clipboard where it lay. He stood at attention in front of a brigadier general and the lieutenant colonel he had assaulted 9 days ago in front of 2 of his own Lance Corporals. Sergeant, the packet you delivered to Colonel Reinhold yesterday afternoon at 14:48 contains a sworn statement, a falsified visitor log, 2 witness signatures secured under duress, and a cover memo requesting trespass charges against an officer of this Marine Corps. Lieutenant Colonel Halverson has not pressed a thing against you in 8 days. That is going to change in the next 8 minutes. He looked past Whitford. MPs. 2 MPs from the Provost Marshal's office stepped out from behind the H&HS shack. Whitford's face did not change. He had not allowed himself to understand yet. Halverson lowered her hand from the salute. She did not speak. She did not look at Whitford. She looked once at Lindgren in the front rank of the maintenance cadre. Lindgren nodded once. She looked once at Sella Knox in the line crew rank. Knox was crying quietly without changing posture. Halverson nodded. She turned to Aldrich. "Sir, permission to recover the formation." "Granted, Colonel." Halverson walked the 80 meters of apron with the sergeant major 3 paces back. Marines held the salute until she passed. At the front of the apron, she returned to her position at Aldrich's right shoulder. She did not look at Whitford as the MPs walked him off. His clipboard stayed on the asphalt where it had fallen. The squadron ready room at 0830 Thursday morning had the same long oak table the squadron had used for safety briefs every Monday since the squadron had stood up in 1970. Aldrich at the head, Reinhold to his left, Halverson to his right, Lindgren in plain utilities standing by the door, 3 MPs in the corridor with Whitford in pre-trial restraint. Reinhold opened the maintenance folder Lindgren had walked into his office at 0801 this morning. Page 1. The Talon Reach Joint Exercise Plan. Page 2. Ground Commander Signature Block. M. Halverson dated May 17th, 3 days before Whitford claimed a civilian named Halverson had struck him on the apron. Page 2. The H&HS Visitor Logbook photograph. 0937 in original ink, beside Whitford's whited-out 0922. Page 3. The swipe card record for Whitford on March 8th. 0200 to 0600. Off post. Page 4. The 4-minute call notes from Lance Corporal Casper Eilers, discharged from the Marine Corps 6 months ago after a fabricated misconduct chit, signed by Sergeant Whitford. Page 5. The maintenance shop after-action note from May 20th, confirming the tail rotor servo find on 718 at 1011, signed under Halverson's cover initials. Page 6. Sella Knox's written witness statement, 4 sentences, taken at 0742 this morning. Aldrich read the folder for 90 seconds. Lance Corporal Knox. Knox stepped in. Service Charlies. Eyes ahead. From the cockpit of Viper 718 on the morning of May 20th. Did Sergeant Whitford touch the officer first? Yes, sir. Did the officer strike Sergeant Whitford? No, sir. She put him on the asphalt with a hip throw after he grabbed her elbow. He grabbed her elbow first. I saw it through the canopy. Thank you, Lance Corporal. You may stand fast. Estrella stepped in. His shoulders were not yet level. He stood at attention. His hands shook once and then steadied. Lance Corporal Estrella, one question. Did Sergeant Whitford touch her first? Estrella's eyes went to the deck. His shoulders dropped a full inch. He answered without raising them. Yes, sir. Did you sign the witness block on his sworn statement believing he had told the truth? No, sir. Thank you, Lance Corporal. You may stand fast. Koski came next. One question. 2-word answer. He stood fast. The IG team had the records open on the table. They spoke in turn. The fabricated chit against Casper Eilers. The pattern of hazing junior Marines on Whitford's augment, including a written complaint from Sela Knox he had buried in his own desk drawer at the H&HS shack. The swipe card record for March 8th. A second fabricated chit from 2025 against a maintainer who had left the wing for North Carolina. Aldrich listened without expression. When the IG was done, he nodded once. Sergeant Whitford is relieved on the spot. Charges: making a false official statement, false swearing, assault on a senior commissioned officer under Article 128, conduct unbecoming, suspension of all access pending court-martial. Walk him off the deck. The MPs walked Whitford off the deck. The corridor went quiet. Reinhold turned his head 2 degrees toward Halverson. Ma'am, I owe you an apology I'm going to give in writing this afternoon. Don't. You read the page too. Reinhold did not answer. He put the folder closed on the table. Halverson stood. She walked the length of the ready room to the door. She stopped in front of Sela Knox. Lance Corporal, the Master Gunnery Sergeant has a billet open on 718 as lead plane captain. As of this morning, the billet is yours. He will mentor. You will run the bird. Knox stared for a beat. Aye, ma'am. The complaint you wrote, that Sergeant Whitford buried. Master Gunnery Sergeant has it. It will not be buried. Knox could not answer. She nodded. Some viewers had been here before. Some viewers had written that complaint themselves and watched a sergeant put it in a desk drawer and lock it. Some viewers had been on Knox's side of this morning and had not had a Master Gunnery Sergeant in the front rank. If this was the kind of story those viewers wanted more of, a woman who let 9 days of paperwork stack against her so the system would do its own work, they could subscribe to Honor Tales. The next one would drop tomorrow morning, and the woman in it had been underestimated by a much bigger man than Sergeant Whitford. 1947 Thursday evening. Dusk. The apron was empty. The Vipers were inside, tied down. The hangar bay doors were pulled to half. The last APU had spun down 40 seconds ago. Halverson walked alone to the back of the bay, where a small black Walnut Squadron memorial board hung on the wall behind the maintenance crib. 12 brass plates. She stopped 2 fingers below the 3rd plate from the bottom. Staff Sergeant Drew R. Kasparian, USMC. 12 February 2014. Sangen Helmand. She did not touch the plate. Her watch turned face up on the inside of her wrist. Her secure phone vibrated once in her pocket. She opened it without taking her eyes off the plate. A coded greeting from a call sign she had been told was gone in 2014. Gauntlet, this is Slate. Mombasa. Pier 12. The current's running. She closed the screen. She turned toward the hangar bay door. She walked toward the Huey pad, where Aldrich's bird was spinning up for the return flight. The brass plate went dark behind her. Every soldier carries a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to Honor Tales for more.